name is Melvina Sykes, and I am the QEP Communications Intern. Today I have with me a very special guest, Miss Tina Brown. Tina Brown wrote her first book, Crooked Road Straight, The Awakening of AIDS activist Linda Jordan, while she was covering crime and justice issues simultaneously at the Hartford Courant in Connecticut. Her work has been recognized for excellence for meritorious journalism by the Casey Journalism Center at the University of Maryland, Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism, the National Association of Black Journalists, and the New England Associated Press News Executive Association. Tina Brown has conducted self-empowerment workshops for youth, inmates, and GED students on various aspects of storytelling. She is the executive editor of SSU Media High, a 2-week residential journalism camp for high school students at Savannah State University, and the administrative assistant at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communications at Savannah State University. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Brown.
Thank you so much.
So my very first question is, what made you choose to write the book, Crooked Road Straight, The Awakening of AIDS activist Linda Jordan?
Well, it was a learning, maybe 10 years before I even thought about writing a book, but I had a question. One of my friends at the job that I worked in Macon had died suddenly, and there wasn't a lot of discussion. There were lots of whispers, and I thought, wow, well, at least I could go to his funeral and to meet his parents, and they didn't allow us to do that, so it was a secret. And it made me think that sometime in the mid-'80s, if people were passing away and no one was talking about it, we might miss our friends and not know whatever happened. So someone whispered the answer that he had AIDS, and so it made me think that I needed to ask more questions, and that's really the foundation for the story.
Okay, what kind of research did you do for this book, and how long do you typically spend researching before beginning a book?
Well, it started in the mid-'80s, and I didn't publish until 2007. So that was a journey. Sometimes things are destined to happen. So you're placed in places at certain times. And just for that first instance when that young man passed away, then the next place I lived in California, I was reporting, and I was assigned to San Francisco to write about the quotes that were coming back for the first time after the quotes had been distributed across the country. And it kind of said, this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And then I looked at the panels, and I was really surprised that I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. And it made me empathy. I felt empathy about what they said, but I didn't feel like I wanted to write it at the time. And I feel like that's a confession. Mm-hmm. That most of us in our country, as we've been introduced to it as white gay men, Haitians, and drug users, most people separated themselves from those groups, and not knowing that that next wave would be African Americans, heterosexual females, and bam, I was like, that could be me. Yeah. And I could say that because I lived a risky life, mostly 20-year-olds, do, right? And so I got really afraid, and I had to get questioned and had the testing and found out that I was negative, but I had the question as a journalist, what, if not me, then whom? And that led to Crooked Road Straight.
Okay. Can you describe your writing process to us?
After 10 years of reporting, I had to realize that I had to do more than just talk to people. I had to get documents. So that research, for the Jordan family, for example, I had to get their records from the social workers. I had to get the records from the police, the school systems. Their children had been taken into foster care. So it took a couple of years to get that done. So that research helped to confirm all of the stories that I had been researched with interviews. And, it was like piles and piles of of reporting, and I just stacked them together by decades and tried to figure out what would be the best thing. So I outlined them and outlined the stories and outlined it more. And then once you start to see the trends in which you might tell some life story, that became the book. And my editors, I had 3 editors, helped me to refine that.
Wow, that took a lot of dedication. Can you describe the process of actually getting the book published?
Well, I used to save. I saved a lot of money, and so I borrowed money. My first, I borrowed for $25,000 from myself to pay for the editors and the designers, and I wanted to make sure in the printing would be done as if they didn't. Most people wouldn't know that Tad Brown Publishing was me.
Mm.
And so my team I hired, and we were all professional. And once we got that done, we presented it to the independent publishing group, and they decided to give their salespeople 3 years to sell as many of the 5,000 prints. And so they sold across the world. So that was the process of distribution. It made it easier for me because I'm not much of a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
People have to hand me money because I don't do that as well as I should.
Throughout writing this book, you took Linda down memory lane, from the time she found out she had HIV and didn't want to live anymore, to the time where she first announced that she had the virus. Can you tell us what it felt like watching her describe these memories and remembering those emotions?
I'm not sure about how I can't say how her emotion felt, but she grew. I think that the linchpin was that, thanks for reading the book,
Mm-hmm.
Her children were in foster care.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted her babies back. And so she had to really work. It wasn't as much HIV that what made her depressed. It was on the fact that she couldn't use drugs anymore, and she had to go into recovery and permanently. And so I'll never forget that the foster parent said she had to go to church. She had to go to the Salvation Army. That's what she was a member of that congregation. And so she said in order to see the kids, they had to go to church. And she found God in that process. And so while most people say she dragged for maybe 3 years related to HIV, but it was more about her coming through the realization that she experienced a lot of abuse with her family, and that's why she may have medicated because of it. And she needed to forgive her biological father and grandfather and her husband and all of the bad things that she'd been through her life in order to live without medicating with heroin. I call that self-medicating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have you always wanted to write a book, or did you just feel that Linda Jordan has such an amazing story that you needed to tell it?
Well, I'll tell you a secret. I can tell this today. I was in the 4th grade, and my teacher had us write a fictional book, and I wrote it about the bicentennial year in which we were supposed to go to Philadelphia and see the bell. And what I saw as a little girl was that Liberty Bell was cracked. And Miss Whitaker walked up and said, she whispered, she said, "You're going to be a writer." And
4th grade.
I was in 4th grade. And I believed her. And so that journey has been in my life from the very beginning. And I haven't been able to find her since I actually published, because my journalism was my segue into writing for books. But she was my inspiration. You know, sometimes people mentor you in ways into young people that form you for the rest of your life. And it was Miss Whitaker who said, "You're going to be a writer."
Okay. Between conducting the research and getting the book published, how long did everything take to complete?
It's about 15 years and about $60,000. It was very expensive. You know, when your company publishes, you have to spend a lot of funds to move crates from place to place and to the different distribution houses so they can go and sell after then. So there was, it's still ongoing. I don't have as much activity as I used to, but I mean, I had a book store call me a week ago and said, "Hey, I need some books." Or people who were in clubs call and say, "Can you send me books?" Mm-hmm. So until they're over, it won't. We can't call it over. I wish it was over so I could focus on the next project.
Would you like to share with our audience your experience as a journalist? How many hours in average does a journalist write per day?
Well, you read as much as you write. Mm-hmm. It depends on what assignments are, whether you're independent. I think people as independent journalists, I worked for a staff for most of my career, but afterwards I had to work on my back porch, and I have to get the business of journalism together. So average you spend about 12 hours. You're consumed with a subject. Either you have to meet people where they are. You have to listen to what they say. You have to research and confirm what they do, and it's pretty big. It's really hard to do it in 4 hours or something like that. It depends on what the subject is, but it does take. I most of my life. I mean, I was married to the business, so I worked until it was over.
Mm-hmm. What are the main differences between writing articles and writing a book, would you say?
It may be the time that you spend. Mm-hmm. You want it, you can just, I could spend an hour about you and I have an outline of your life. Mm-hmm. I go off that. Yeah. So, but those are just the points that you want to go and eliminate later. So it depends on what the subject is and why you want to talk to them. It's really hard to say. The foundation of accuracy is probably everything is the same. You have to spend some time to know that they're telling you truthfully what they're saying, and you also have to confirm what everyone has said. And so it depends on the subject, but it just depends that you spend a significant enough time to walk away and say, I think I have the truth. Mm-hmm. And if it's something that you worry about, or you wake up and you think, I'm not sure I have that, you have to go back and ask that question.
Mm-hmm. You are the administrative assistant in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communications at Savannah State University. What type of writing do you do in your job?
I mostly write grants for the SSU Media High School Journalism program. It's, to me, as the most important aspect of my job, because the next generation is upon us. Mm-hmm. And I know that the 14-year-olds to 17-year-olds will they'll never read the newspaper the same way. They will never watch TV the same way. So I have to provide the foundations so that they know that they can learn about the new way to do everything mobilely. And they need to have skills of writing, photography, videos, social media. it just, everyone has to do everything. So if I feel encouraged that just like my mentors mentored me, it's just my job to make sure the next generation is going to go ahead.
Okay. So, the Right Attitude is Savannah State University's Quality Enhancement Plan, a campus-wide initiative to enhance student learning by improving attitudes about writing. Some students have negative attitudes about writing, either because they are intimidated by it or uninterested in the subject which they are writing about. What advice can you share with students to help them overcome any negative views on writing?
The more they read, they'll be more comfortable about writing. I mean, there's no divorce between reading and writing. The subject, if you're not interested in the subject, you pick the wrong subject. You might have to go back and figure out where passion lies. And I mean, sometimes you have to do assignments that you just have to do, but you have to figure out where I enter into that particular subject. And I think that the more you read, the better you'll write. And it's just a way I don't know about a negative. I mean, I'm in a program right now that's the toughest program I've ever been in, but it's exhilarating when I get my papers, with my critiques on there, because I know that I can continue to improve. And writing is a process of improving, and so if you welcome it, it won't be as hard as, I've taught writing for years, and if you enjoy it and the people that teach you about writing, it'll be so much easier.
Okay, Ms. Brown, well, are there any final thoughts you would like to leave us with?
Well, I think this is a program that is outstanding, and you find students who are interested in learning about the subject and improving, and so I think that we should just expect that we should embrace it. Writing, the right attitude is probably the best thing that I've seen at the university.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you for coming and joining us on behalf of the QEP, as well as hosting our Lunch and Learn earlier.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.